Howdy y'all, this is Reglas and welcome to a recently out game called Dagon. Some of y'all might have seen my previous recording that I posted of Dagon on YouTube. I went through it and I looked back through the recording files and I noticed a good chunk in that something happened to the recording and the visual wasn't there for the audio. So I just wanted to come in here and re-record it and get it situated. After that recording, I went and got back on and realized that the game ended right after I had stopped last time. So I'm just gonna try to get one extra long episode of Dagon and just have that be, we played this game. It's got an hour long, maybe, depending on how long it takes you to get through everything. And it's a really neat little free game, and this DLC, the Eldritch Box, is out. It has Fish Head, the book, and I think the ebook, and it has Dagon by Lovecraft as an ebook and as an audiobook. $5 to support them, and you get some books out of it and some wallpapers, so that's really nice of them to do. This one isn't out yet, and this game isn't out yet. I really enjoyed this. I loved getting the story and everything from it, so do please go and support them. This game is actually really well thought out. And yeah, this is Dagon. It is it's inspired by Lovecraft's book Dagon. H.P. Lovecraft. He did a lot of books that were like horror based, but like his own spin on everything, and it started a whole Lovecraftian movement. So the horror behind a lot of it is really cool. So we're gonna get in here and see if it will function and record correctly this time. So let's jump in here and get started. Starting a new game will overwrite your previous save. Are you sure you want to proceed? Yes. Dagon is a faithful, interactive adaptation of H.P. Lovecraft's work, focused on story and atmosphere. You will not find difficult choices, action sequences, or inventory management here, and movement is limited to progressing through locations along with the plot. Yeah, so if you didn't see the previous recording for this, it is story-based, atmosphere-based, and you're limited to what you can see and that frame that it allows you to see.
I am writing this under an appreciable mental strain, since by tonight I shall be no more.
And he's very grim. So let's take a look around, see what all I can see. Just the window. Alright, window. During the game, you will encounter interactive elements. Some of them will allow you to continue your journey. Others reveal interesting facts about the original short story, its historical background, and the author. Yeah, so the circle means that it's a story-based piece, and the question mark means that it's a little interesting tidbit. Some of the trivia is hidden. In order to find these secrets, focus your eyes and look for the elder sign. So this little symbol here. You can also access all the found facts later. They will be available in the main menu. So the first time I went through, I didn't find them all. And I didn't see them later when I was looking through. But I want to try and find them all and at least read them. Okay. So that's the story piece. The first time I did this, I used my controller that I have, but I think using the mouse might be more productive. Alright, let's see what he says.
Penniless, and at the end of my supply of the drug which alone makes life endurable, I can bear the torture no longer, and shall cast myself from this garret window into the squalid street below.
You are a very morbid person. And he's at the end, he's got no more money, and he's at the end of his supply of...
Do not think from my slavery to morphine that I am a weakling or a degenerate. When you have read these hastily scrawled pages, you may guess, though never fully realize, why it is that I must have forgetfulness or death.
Very morbid person. Okay, so... that was an eldritch sign, and it's for the morphine. Right? Yes. So morphine entered into use in the 19th century and was routinely administered to treat severe pain during the American Civil War, that was 1861 to 1865, and World War I, which was 1914 to 1918. It was also sold without restrictions until 1914. Morphine became more popular after the invention of the hypodermic syringe around 1854. Friedrich Sertner, who first isolated the substance, originally named it morphium after Morpheus, the Greek god associated with dreams. At the time when Dagon was published, morphine abuse, known as soldier's disease, already posed a big problem in the United States. Okay, so he has this soldier's disease from something else entirely, I think. So let's see, what is this? Oh, ink. Okay.
It was in one of the most open and least frequented parts of the broad Pacific that the packet of which I was supercargo fell a victim to the German sea raider.
Okay, so that means that he was part of a group, I'm guessing, since he was part of the cargo. It's a ship, a warship with soldiers on it. And they were captive. Yeah. They're attacked by a German boat.
The Great War was then at its very beginning, and the ocean forces of the Hun had not completely sunk to their later degradation, so that our vessel was made a legitimate prize, whilst we of her crew were treated with all the fairness and consideration due us as naval prisoners.
Okay, so the Germans attacked their boat and took them prisoner. Is that the only one? There's that as well. So this, the Huns. The Huns were essentially ancient nomads who established a dominion in Europe and invaded the Roman Empire in the 5th century AD. They were known as brutal, deadly warriors and masters of quick raids who also developed powerful composite bows, lassos, and early siege weapons. During World War I, the British used the word Hun as a synonym for Germans in order to emphasize their brutality. However, the term originated when the German Emperor Wilhelm II gave a speech to his troops on the 27th of July, 1900, before they embarked to China. Should you encounter the enemy, he will be defeated. No quarter will be given. Prisoners will not be taken. Whoever falls into your hands is forfeited. Just as 1,000 years ago, the Huns under their King Attila made a name for themselves, one that even today makes them seem mighty in history and legend. May the name German be affirmed by you in such a way in China that no Chinese will ever again dare to look cross-eyed at a German. The refusal to take prisoners was a clear breach of the laws and customs of war adopted during the First Hague Convention of 1899. Okay, so he's calling them Huns because they're Germans, which is a strange contextual thing to learn.
So liberal, indeed, was the discipline of our captors that 5 days after we were taken, I managed to escape alone in a small boat with water and provisions for a good length of time.
Okay, so he was able to get free just long enough. That's my water and provisions. Okay, well. Yeah, I don't see anything else.
When I finally found myself adrift and free, I had but little idea of my surroundings. Never a competent navigator, I could only guess vaguely by the sun and stars that I was somewhat south of the equator.
Okay.
Of the longitude, I knew nothing, and no island or coastline was in sight.
Yeah. You're a little bit stuck, buddy. Okay, so that's where I'm supposed to go. Hello. Okay. Well then.
The weather kept fair, and for uncounted days I drifted aimlessly beneath the scorching sun, waiting either for some passing ship or to be cast on the shores of some habitable land.
Hello? The Return to Short Stories. Dagon was written in July 1917 and first published in 1919 in The Vagrant, an amateur magazine focused on the supernatural. The story is the first of his stories that introduce an element from the Cthulhu mythos, Dagon itself. A pagan cult worshipping Dagon later appears in The Shadow over Innsmouth, one of Lovecraft's most popular works. 1917 is also the year when he wrote The Tomb, a story about Jervis Dudley, a daydreamer who discovers a mysterious mausoleum in the woods by his house and becomes obsessed with it. These two works marked Lovecraft's return to short story writing after he burned most of his attempts in the genre 9 years prior and decided to concentrate on poetry. Lovecraft stated that it was his friend, William Paul Cook, a literary publisher and critic, who convinced him to start writing weird fiction again. Okay. Well, that was... you could only see it when you focused, so...
But neither ship nor land appeared, and I began to despair in my solitude upon the heaving vastness of unbroken blue.
I can only look at the sky. We're looking at the sun. Okay.
The change happened whilst I slept. Its details I shall never know, for my slumber, though troubled and dream-infested, was continuous.
It's not creepy being that the first thing you see. Nothing immediate, so...
When at last I awoke, it was to discover myself half sucked into a slimy expanse of hellish black mire, which extended about me in monotonous undulations as far as I could see.
Yeah.
And in which my boat lay grounded some distance away. Though one might well imagine that my first sensation would be of wonder at so prodigious and unexpected a transformation of scenery, I was in reality more horrified than astonished.
I mean, if this was the first thing I saw, I would be too. After a while you might get used to it, but...
For there was in the air, and in the rotting soil, a sinister quality which chilled me to the very core.
Yeah, maybe.
The region was putrid with the carcasses of decaying fish, and of other, less describable things which I saw protruding from the nasty mud of the unending plain. Perhaps I should not hope to convey in mere words the unutterable hideousness that can dwell in absolute silence and barren immensity.
Yeah.
There was nothing within hearing, and nothing in sight, save a vast reach of black slime. Yet the very completeness of the stillness and the homogeneity of the landscape oppressed me with a nauseating fear.
So he's just extremely afraid of all this. Okay. I don't like that thing. That looks like a giant octopus. There's a fish. There's something over there that's an octopus type thing. That's some kind of weird creature. This guy here that's like going up and down, he's got like crab legs and tentacles. It's very weird. Here's a little ammonite type creature. There's a squid. He looks like he's got spider webs on him. Whatever that thing is on our boat. Okay.
The sun was blazing down from a sky which seemed to me almost black in its cloudless cruelty, as though reflecting the inky marsh beneath my feet.
So that's where I'm supposed to go. Let's take a look around. No? Okay. Oh, hello. The Origins of Dagon. Dagon seems to be inspired by Fishhead, a short novel by Irvin S. Cobb about unnatural affinities between a hybrid idiot and a strange fish of an isolated lake. Supernatural horror in literature, H.P. Lovecraft. And Lovecraft's dream about a strange island emerging from the ocean and him crawling in the ooze that covered its surface. I dreamed that whole hideous crawl, and can yet feel the ooze sucking me down. In Defense of Dagon, H.P. Lovecraft. Lovecraft's interest in the topic stemmed from his aversion to fish and sea smells, in his own words. I have hated fish and feared the sea and everything connected with it since I was 2 years old, but I cannot recall what earlier experience gave me such a profound and lasting aversion to the sea and seafood. The Dweller in Darkness, Lovecraft, 1927, Donald Wandre. Okay, so he just... The reason he made it so gross and stuff is he had a strange, as he calls it, aversion to the sea. Okay.
As I crawled into the stranded boat, I realized that only one theory could explain my position. Through some unprecedented volcanic upheaval, a portion of the ocean floor must have been thrown to the surface, exposing regions for which innumerable millions of years had lain hidden under unfathomable watery depths. So great was the extent of the new land which had risen beneath me that I could not detect the faintest noise of the surging ocean, straining my ears as I might. Nor were there any seafowl to prey upon the dead things.
Yeah, it's strange that there's all this watery land and all these sea creatures, and there's nothing here to try to scavenge. There should be scavengers, right? That's where I'm supposed to go. Yeah, they're all going to die a slow death. I don't like this thing. No idea what it is, but I don't like it. Oh, hello. mystery of volcanic islands. Volcanic eruptions sometimes result in the creation of islands. Most of them are transient and erode after some time, but some prove permanent. The floating pumice, porous rock created when superheated, pressurized rock is ejected from a volcano, can move across long distances and transport barnacles and macroalgae that cling to it. In 2001, rafts of pumice created during the eruption of a volcano near Tonga, Polynesia, eventually reached Australia. Okay then. Okay. So, what's going ahead? We got that one. It's gone now. Okay. I don't like that we're at a tilt for some reason. Like, is there a hill going up that direction? And then, what is that? Why is it so big and why is it so oozy? I don't like. No like. Hello.
For several hours I sat thinking or brooding in the boat, which lay upon its side and afforded a slight shade as the sun moved across the heavens. As the day progressed, the ground lost some of its stickiness and seemed likely to dry sufficiently for traveling purposes in a short time. That night I slept but little, and the next day I made for myself a pack containing food and water, preparatory to an overland journey in search of the vanished sea and possible rescue.
Okay, so there's that. I don't like that thing up there. Okay, I don't see anything besides this fish. It's a flounder, isn't it? I keep looking in the stars because I'm like, is there something in the stars? It's not.
On the third morning, I found the soil dry enough to walk upon with ease.
Okay, so the sun has dried out everything. Good.
The odor of the fish was maddening, but I was too much concerned with graver things to mind so slight an evil, and set out boldly for an unknown goal.
Okay. Yeah. The muck. Ugh. This looks like a giant squid-esque type thing. That's the only thing we got is the sun. Okay. Or the horizon.
All day I forged steadily westward, guided by a faraway hummock which rose higher than any other elevation on the rolling desert.
A weird kind of desert. Yeah, I know. These things are not of any species I know. Come on, give me something. No? Nothing? Oh. Those look like they're supposed to be some kind of living, because those are talons and mouths, but they're not moving any longer. They finally dried out. Alright, let's continue. Tentacles, crab legs, more crab legs, poor humpback whale. I like humpback whales. Alright.
That night I encamped, and and on the following day still travelled toward the hummock, though that object seemed scarcely nearer than when I had first espied it.
Probably gonna camp on that rock. These things look like worms. Don't like. The horrors of the ocean. The creator of the Cthulhu mythos and the fictional underwater city of Reglas. I'm butchering that so bad, and I know it. And the fictional underwater city was convinced that life could not exist at the bottom of the ocean because the water pressure would make it uninhabitable. Today, we know that the darkest depths of the ocean are home to many peculiar organisms. The deepest dwelling fish we have discovered so far, the Mariana snailfish, can live about 8,000 meters, more than 26,000 feet below the ocean's surface, in never-ending darkness, and at incredibly crushing pressures, hundreds of times stronger than those found at sea level. Upon glancing at the modern photos of deep-sea creatures such as the anglerfish, the fang-tooth, or the viperfish, and their truly Lovecraftian characteristics, it's hard not to find some irony in this. Actually, yeah, that's true. That is true. He had a huge fear of... It mentioned he had a huge fear of anything to do with the ocean. So, the horrors of the deep.
By the fourth evening, I attained the base of the mound, which turned out to be much higher than it had appeared from a distance. An intervening valley setting it out in sharper relief from the general surface. Too weary to ascend, I slept in the shadow of the hill. I know not why my dreams were so wild that night, but ere the waning and fantastically gibbous moon had risen far above the eastern plain, I was awake in a cold perspiration, determined to sleep no more. Such visions as I had experienced were too much for me to endure again. And in the glow of the moon I saw how unwise I had been to travel by day. Without the glare of the parching sun, my journey would have cost me less energy.
Yeah, the sun cost him.
Indeed, I now felt quite able to perform the ascent which had deterred me at sunset. Picking up my pack, I started for the crest of the eminence.
Okay, let's see. Ooh, hello. The Loner. Contrary to popular opinion, Lovecraft was not an ever-frowning, eccentric, grumpy loner. He considered himself to be a person who appreciated humor. Moreover, he would often meet with friends in his apartment, or at various cafes in Brooklyn and Manhattan. At times, his social life was so intensive, his work would suffer for months. There was a point when he finally decided he needed to put an end to daily meetings and loitering in New York cafeterias, and resorted to hiding at home and reading with the main room light turned off, pretending he wasn't there whenever a friend knocked on his door. He also had another method of deterring his guests, which involved greeting them in a bathrobe, with an unmade bed visible in the background, and piles of papers scattered across the floor. That's actually kind of funny. Basically, he knew he was a... He knew he liked talking to his friends and stuff, so he stopped it by doing things. That's funny. That's very funny.
I have said that the unbroken monotony of the rolling plain was a source of vague horror to me. But I think my horror was greater when I gained the summit of the mound and looked down the other side into an immeasurable pit or canyon, whose black recesses the moon had not yet soared high enough to illumine.
Yeah, that might...
I felt myself on the edge of the world.
That might would scare some people too.
Peering over the rim into a fathomless chaos of eternal night.
Yeah, it's a pit.
Through my terror ran curious reminiscences of Paradise Lost, and of Satan's hideous climb through the unfashioned realms of darkness. As the moon climbed higher in the sky, I began to see that the slopes of the valley were not quite so perpendicular as I had imagined.
He needed the moonlight to see better. Okay. Well, there's that. There ought to be some form of story. No?
Ledges and outcroppings of rock afforded fairly easy footholds for a descent, whilst after a drop of only a few hundred feet, the declivity became very gradual.
It's gonna be a slippery trek though, look at all that mud. Okay. It feels like there should be more, like what's that? Alright, fine. Let's go.
Urged on by an impulse which I cannot definitely analyze, I scrambled with difficulty down the rocks and stood on the gentler slope beneath.
Maybe survivors' instincts?
Gazing into the Stygian deeps, where no light had yet penetrated. All at once, my attention was captured by a vast and singular object on the opposite slope, which rose steeply about 100 yards ahead of me.
Yeah, that looks a little too structured.
An object that gleamed whitely in the newly bestowed rays of the ascending moon.
It's got a little too much structure to it to be just a piece of the scenery.
That it was merely a gigantic piece of stone, I soon assured myself.
Oh, he thought it was something dangerous.
But I was conscious of a distinct impression that its contour and position were not altogether the work of nature.
Yeah, it's been made by something.
A closer scrutiny filled me with sensations I cannot express.
Well, hang on now. We gotta take a look around. What? Dang. I want more, like, little story tidbits.
For despite its enormous magnitude, and its position in an abyss which had yawned at the bottom of the sea since the world was young,
That you think.
I perceived beyond a doubt that the strange object was a well-shaped monolith, whose massive bulk had known the workmanship and perhaps the worship of living and thinking creatures. Dazed and frightened, yet not without a certain thrill of the scientist's or archaeologist's delight, I examined my surroundings more closely.
Still no? That thing looks like it should be something. That seemed like a cue to, like, look around more, right? I guess not. Here we go.
The moon, now near the zenith, shone weirdly and vividly above the towering steeps that hemmed in the chasm, and revealed the fact that a far-flung body of water flowed at the bottom, winding out of sight in both directions and almost lapping my feet as I stood on the slope.
So it's supposed to be a river?
Across the chasm, the wavelets washed the base of the Cyclopean monolith, on whose surface I could now trace both inscriptions and crude sculptures.
He is using some interesting word choices. think it's fritzing out because of the water. Okay. What's going up here?
The writing was in a system of hieroglyphics unknown to me and unlike anything I'd ever seen in books, consisting for the most part of conventionalized aquatic symbols such as fishes, eels, octopi, crustaceans, mollusks, whales, and the like.
I don't see any eels, and you skipped over like turtles and sharks. I mean, I guess sharks are technically fish. There's an ammonite, there's a jellyfish, there's a bunch of different shell. There's a seahorse, love seahorses. Crab, sea star.
Several characters obviously represented marine things which are unknown to the modern world.
The giant squid, lionfish, or a zebra turkeyfish, depends on how you look at it. There's a weird Cthulhu-esque creature. Oh, there's an alligator in the middle of there. Don't know what this thing is. It's got like a glare.
But whose decomposing forms I had observed on the ocean-risen plain.
Okay, so that's one of the things that we'd seen before.
It was the pictorial carving, however, that did most to hold me spellbound.
So that's the storytelling methods. Dagon contains many themes and storytelling methods that Lovecraft developed in his later works, such as telling the story through carvings at the Mountains of Madness in the Nameless City, journals and characters' notes, the shadow out of time, the haunter of the dark. Okay, so he's using these elements to create, to make the story. The carving is part of the story. We're hearing all of this from notes that he scrawled. Islands emerging from the ocean, which is something that he used in Call of Cthulhu as well, or fictional beings and deities based on real events and mythologies. Migo and the Whisperer in Darkness. It's also considered the origin of the popular Cthulhu mythos. Some of Lovecraft's other stories also conclude in a manner similar to Dagon, but let's skip the details in order not to spoil the ending. Yeah, so they're like, I guess, based on a lot of different mythologies. Nothing else. Okay.
Plainly visible across the intervening water, on account of their enormous size, were an array of bas-reliefs whose subjects would have excited the envy of a doré. I think that these things were supposed to depict men, at least a certain sort of men.
So after the waves, those creatures at the bottom.
Though the creatures were shown disporting like fishes in the waters of some marine grotto.
Okay. Disporting like fishes, they're mer people. Okay? They're mer people. I know that you're like someone from 1900s, but those are mer people. That's a mer octopus, it's a mer shark. Yeah, they're mer people.
Or paying homage at some monolithic shrine, which appeared to be under the waves as well.
Okay, so probably this shrine.
Of their faces and forms I dare not speak in detail.
Yeah, he's from a different time, so this would have been like freaky
For
and
the
scary to
mere
him.
remembrance makes me grow faint. Grotesque beyond the imagination of a Poe or a Bulwer.
If you say so.
They were damnably human in general outline, despite webbed hands and feet, shockingly wide and flabby lips.
I mean, they're underwater creatures. Of course they're gonna look different.
Glassy, bulging eyes, and other features less pleasant to recall. Curiously enough, they seem to have been chiseled badly out of proportion with their scenic background. For one of the creatures was shown in the act of killing a whale, represented as but little larger than himself.
Yeah, humpback whales are actually really large. We saw one a ways back. And if that thing is that big, ooh-y.
I remarked, as I say, their grotesqueness and strange size, but in a moment decided that they were merely the imaginary gods of some primitive fishing or seafaring tribe.
Very European style thinking.
Some tribe whose last descendant had perished eras before the first ancestor of the Piltdown or Neanderthal man was born.
Yeah, very European way of thinking. Hello. The Piltdown man. Lovecraft would often use the latest scientific discoveries as inspiration for his works. He would even update his stories at the last moment in order to make sure they reflected the latest breakthroughs. Unfortunately, this method was not without its flaws. After Lovecraft's death, the Peltdown Man discovery mentioned in Dagon turned out to be a paleoanthropological fraud. In 1912, Charles Dawson, an amateur archaeologist, announced that he had discovered the missing link between ape and man, the fossilized remains of a previously unknown early human. Years later, they turned out to be a forgery, but by that point, the fraud had already managed to negatively affect the early research on human evolution. In the year when the discovery took place, the majority of the scientific community believed Dawson indeed found the missing link. In 1953, Time magazine published evidence proving that Dawson was a con man. It turned out that the fossils of the previously unknown early human consisted of a human skull, the jaw of an orangutan, and chimpanzee teeth. I think I heard about this somewhere, but he pulled together a bunch of pieces and like made them look like they were fossilized and stuff. And he had fossilized human skull, orangutan jaw, and chimpanzee teeth, and tried to pass them off as some kind of early human. But they like found a way to debunk, basically, that this was not an ancestor. Basically saying that Lovecraft had things that he would use in his works that were supposed to be the scientific discovery of the time, and were actually not. Okay. Sorry, my voice is not liking as much talking today.
Awestruck at this unexpected glimpse into a past beyond the conception of the most daring anthropologist,
Okay.
I stood musing whilst the moon cast queer reflections on the silent channel before me.
Sorry, my thought process is, why that word? Why? Why couldn't you say weird?
Then, suddenly, I saw it.
Spook.
With only a slight churning to mark its rise to the surface, the thing slid into view above the dark waters.
Slid. Ready? Slid.
Inside and loathsome, it darted like a stupendous monster of nightmares to the monolith.
Slid. Yes, slid.
About which it flung its gigantic scaly arms, while it bowed its hideous head and gave vent to certain measured sounds.
Mm-hmm. Ooh.
I think I went mad then.
Very much so.
Of my frantic ascent of the slope and cliff, and of my delirious journey back to the stranded boat, I remember little.
So he doesn't really remember going back to the boat. He basically freaked out and had a panic attack and made a run for it. Which, I mean, most people would do in that situation. Something strange.
I believe I sang a great deal and laughed oddly when I was unable to sing.
Something strange appeared and you freaked out. Yeah, I could see that. The humpback whale.
I have indistinct recollections of a great storm sometime after I reached the boat. At any rate, I know that I heard pearls of thunder and other tones which nature utters only in her wildest moods.
A thunderstorm. Everything here stopped moving.
When I came out of the shadows, I was in a San Francisco hospital. Brought thither by the captain of the American ship which had picked up my boat in mid-ocean.
Okay.
In my delirium, I had said much, but found that my words had been given scant attention.
Yeah, they believed you to be delirious, so they didn't really pay attention to what you were saying.
Of any land upheaval in the Pacific, my rescuers knew nothing. Nor did I deem it necessary to insist upon a thing which I knew they could not believe.
Yeah, it's true. Hello? The journalist. Lovecraft was a prominent figure in the world of amateur journalism. In 1915, he started publishing his own journal, called The Conservative, which included political and social commentary, poetry, short stories, and literary criticism written by him and other authors. Howard, I forgot that was his first name, was a skilled wordsmith, but he also took criticisms to heart, which resulted in his decision to step away from writing poetry and concentrate on weird fiction again. For the first time since his teenage years, Dagon, published in 1917, is one of the short stories written during that period. In this excerpt from The Conservative, the master of horror fiction explains his attitude towards warfare and the idea of world peace. Why any sane human being can believe in the possibility of universal peace is more than the conservative can fathom. Should the entire civilized world agree simultaneously to disarm, one or more nations would undoubtedly retain secret armaments and at the proper time take advantage of their more altruistic and less astute contemporaries in a wild career of conquest against unarmed victims. No country is, or ever can be, above warfare until the basic impulses of the human animal shall have miraculously changed. Okay. It's a very in-depth way of thinking. Take a look around. I see we don't have a body. Hello. In Defense of Dagon, in 1921, Lovecraft released a series of 3 essays. The Defense Reopens, The Defense Remains Open, and Final Words, later published as a collection titled In Defense of Dagon, in which he rebuked a series of criticisms directed at his works, some notable quotes. I paint what I dream, and will let the public settle the rest amongst themselves. Mr. Monday asks the raison d'etre of Dagon. I will give it, purely and simple, to reproduce a mood. Its object is the simplest in all art portrayal. The physical horrors of war, no matter how extreme and unprecedented, hardly would have a bearing on the entirely different realm of supernatural terror. Ghosts are still ghosts. The mind can get more thrills from unrealities than from realities. In the essays, Lovecraft touches upon the topics of atheism, materialism, the quest for truth, and the love of science. Okay. So... Hello. So he was defending his works and basically saying, you get what you get out of it. this is what I get out of it. This was my dream, and I'm just writing my inner thoughts. The atheist. Lovecraft considered himself an atheist and absolute materialist, which he attributed partially to his early childhood interest in astronomy and science in general. In his own words, "I am indeed an absolute materialist so far as actual belief goes, with not a shred of credence in any form of supernaturalism, religion, spiritualism, transcendentalism, metempsychosis, or immortality. All I say is that I think it is darn unlikely that anything like a central cosmic will, a spirit world, or an eternal survival of personality exist. They are the most preposterous and unjustified of all the guesses which can be made about the universe, and I am not enough of a hair-splitter to pretend that I don't regard them as arrogant and negligible moonshine. In theory, I am an agnostic, but pending the appearance of radical evidence, I must be classed, practically and provisionally, as an atheist." Sources: Against Religion, The Atheist Writings of H.P. Lovecraft, by H.P. Lovecraft. Mythos: The Myths and Tales of H.P. Lovecraft and Robert E. Howard. H.P. Lovecraft and Robert E. Okay, so he considered himself to not be religious. Basically kind of going on the, there is no evidence, so he's a practical person. There's no real evidence thereof, so he doesn't believe. To each their own. Escape.
Once I sought out a celebrated ethnologist.
Okay.
And amused him with peculiar questions regarding the ancient Philistine legend of Dagon, the fish god.
Okay. Dagon, pronounced Dagon, was the main deity of the Philistines, worshipped throughout the Middle East as the ancient god of fertility and crops. In Hebrew, the word Dagon was a common noun for grain. The rulers of Akkad in Mesopotamia chose him as the patron saint of their war conquests. He also appeared as the judge of the dead in an Assyrian poem and an underworld prison warder in one of the Babylonian texts. He is often mistakenly taken for a fish god due to the wrong interpretation of his name, as in Hebrew the word dag or dig means fish. In H.P. Lovecraft's works, Dagon is an underwater deity ruling over the deep ones, a humanoid race with fish traits that resides in the oceans. He is worshipped by a secret cult called the Esoteric Order of Dagon. Okay. Let's find out if there's anything else here. There's a lot of papers. Why does this all feel weird? That's where I'm supposed to go next. Maybe I can get a better view of something over there.
But soon perceiving that he was hopelessly conventional, I did not press my inquiries.
Okay, so the specialist he went to try to speak about Dagon and learn more about what he thought happened to him, or what happened to him, I guess. He soon decided that the man was like, if this were to be real, he quit asking, because stuff. Hello. The Marketer. Lovecraft's attempts to find a job in 1925 were influenced by advice he received from friends. Among others, he started freelancing for a marketing magazine. When he would write announcements and commercials, feel free to judge his copywriting skills for yourself. From an ad for Curtis Woodwork. Curtis Woodwork embraces both the usual structural units and the cleverest contrivances of built-in or permanent furniture, such as bookcases, dressers, buffets, and cupboards. Every model is conceived and created with the purest art, ripest scholarship, and mellowest craftsmanship which energetic enterprise can command, and made to conform rigidly to the architecture of each particular type of home. The cost, considering the quality, is amazingly low, and a trademark of the individual pieces prevents any substitution by careless contractors. Source: Lovecraft Studies, Volume 7, Number 1. Okay. Is there anything down there? No. There is a piece here. August Derleth and the Cthulhu Mythos. August Derleth was an American writer and anthologist. He also befriended Lovecraft and published many of his works through his company, Arkham House. Although he greatly contributed to the popularization of the author's works after his death, he is surrounded by numerous controversies. One of his most questionable decisions involved introducing the good versus evil doctrine. Derleth was a devout Catholic to the Cthulhu mythos, which contrasted with Lovecraft's view of the world and his approach to cosmic horror. As a result, the author's works are often misunderstood and misinterpreted in today's culture. It is also worth noting that Lovecraft was never really interested in creating a mythology, and the term Cthulhu mythos was coined by Derleth after the author left the mortal plane. Okay, so many of the things, the good versus evil and all that stuff that we know about the Cthulhu mythos was never what the author originally intended. It wasn't even supposed to be a mythology or a mythos. It was just something that Lovecraft had seen in a dream and was just part of his weird horror genre. And his publisher was a Catholic, so he coined the mythos and the good versus evil into his works to make more money, it looks like. Okay. What's next? It just feels so creepy still. Well, that's where I'm supposed to go. Scientist? I didn't even see that one. These days, the word scientist is a widely accepted term, but at the time Dagon was published, it was subject to a wide debate. After the author used it in the story, critics pointed out that man of science was a more appropriate term to employ. He admitted in Defense of Dagon that if Dagon were to be reprinted, he would indeed use the phrase they suggested. Scientist was coined as an analog to artist, to be used when referring to those studying different branches of science. Yet in the 19th and early 20th century, scientific researchers in Great Britain and the US were of the opinion that man of science, resembling the term man of letters, was the only proper choice. Among other things, it was gender-specific, indicating that science was an endeavor to be pursued by only one sex. The term scientist became more accepted only after World War II, and man of science started fading into obscurity as an old-fashioned synonym. Okay, so basically going over some history for this one word. Wow. Okay. Next is supposed to be the door. Oh, okay. Guess we're going to the door.
It is at night, especially when the moon is gibbous and waning, that I see the thing.
Well, you did see it at night, too.
I tried morphine, but the drug has given only transient surcease, and has drawn me into its clutches as a hopeless slave.
Those papers were empty before.
So now I am to end it all, having written a full account for the information or the contemptuous amusement of my fellow men.
Lovecraft on tobacco and alcohol. Lovecraft hated tobacco, even though he used to smoke when he was 12. In order to look and feel like an adult in his correspondence with a friend, Reinhard Kleiner, he claims that he quit as soon as he started wearing long pants. He also had a very strong opinion about alcohol, as evidenced by his letter to Zelia Brown, dated the 13th of February, 1928. As for the matter of drinking, I have never tasted intoxicating liquor, and never intend to, having a strong aesthetic disgust at anything which blunts or coarsens the delicate, natural equipoise of the evolved human intellect and imagination. Drinking excited my personal repugnance. Hence, I don't drink. Let the herd do what they will. I am rather in favor of prohibition, the prohibition of any one antisocial force as well as of any other. This is from Spirit of Revision, Lovecraft's Letters to Zelia Brown. Read Bishop. And several people put, didn't. Okay. Nothing else? Wait. Hello? Elder sign. At another house where people were stirring, he asked questions about the gods and whether they danced often upon Lyrian. But the farmer and his wife would only make the elder sign and tell him the way to Nur and Ulthar. The Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath by H.P. Lovecraft. Elder sign is a protective symbol that can be found in various works of pop culture, usually represented by a 5-pointed star with an eye flame symbol at its center. For example, in games inspired by H.P. Lovecraft's writing, it is supposed to ward away all kinds of cosmic horrors. However, this is a later version of the sign, created by the author's friend, writer August Derleth. In our game, we have used the original symbol as designed by Lovecraft, in the form of a 6-pointed branch, which he sometimes included in letters to his friends. Okay, so the pentagram, the 5-pointed star, was created by Derleth. Lovecraft used the 6-pointed branch thing that we've been seeing everywhere. Okay. Nothing else, looks like. Continue.
Often, I ask myself if it could not all have been a pure phantasm.
Questioning what happened to him.
A mere freak of fever, as I lay sun-stricken and raving in the open boat, after my escape from the German man-of-war.
That's what the doctors and stuff were assuming it was.
This I ask myself, but ever does there come before me a hideously vivid vision in reply. I cannot think of the deep sea without shuddering at the nameless things that may at this very moment be crawling and floundering on its slimy bed.
Okay.
Worshipping their ancient stone idols and carving their own detestable likenesses on submarine obelisks of water-soaked granite. I dream of a day when they may rise above the billows to drag down into their reeking talons the remnants of puny, war-exhausted mankind. Of a day when the land shall sink and the dark ocean shall ascend amidst universal pandemonium.
So he's having nightmares that this is going to happen. Oh, I can only look in this single view. Yeah, he's having nightmares that either the land is going to sink or the ocean is going to rise, and these things are going to come and, I guess, kill us. Hello.
The end is near.
Okay.
I hear a noise at the door, as of some immense slippery body lumbering against it.
Okay. more, but it's not much use.
It shall not find me.
Okay. That wasn't very useful.
God, that hand! The window! The window!
What hand? Oh no, I can't reach it. Ah! I want it! No! Dang it, okay. Ow. Okay, thank you for playing. We hope you enjoyed immersing yourself in our little pool of cosmic horror. We'd appreciate it if you took a moment to rate Dagon and check out our other games and DLCs. Okay. Before we end things, I want to see how many more I got. I got a lot of them, actually. Wow. I think these two were for before I figured out I could zoom in. Okay, well, it was interesting to see and learn even more about Dagon and H.P. Lovecraft and how things actually were. That was extremely interesting and very intense, and I hope that it came across and that everything worked correctly. Yeah, it seemed to be struggling with the graphics of the water, which I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, that was Dagon. So it only took about an hour to get through, and that's with searching when I figured out how to do it correctly, searching the entire area. And playing it with the controller is a little bit more fun because you can feel the vibrations of certain situations. But, I mean, it is what it is. So, I'm glad you guys were able to join me. I really loved this game. I really loved learning all the extra little tidbits, the trivia that we got to learn. And yeah, thank you guys so much for joining me on this adventure. I absolutely loved it. I loved seeing all these bits of history and bits of Lovecraftian horror. Thank y'all for joining me. Do please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see y'all on the next one. Thank you. Bye-bye.